right. Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're located at. My name is John Ryan Zabinel, and I am your host for this wonderful conference that we've put together here. I'm also the Director of String Music Education at Vandercook College of Music, and I'm here with my wonderful colleagues, Victor Fernandez, who is our tech guy, Shauna St. John, and Glenda Leiter, who are with the Nat King Cole Generation Hope organization. So last fall, if you weren't here with us yesterday, I briefly talked about this story. Last fall, Nat King Cole and I began to plan for a summer string camp for Chicago area students who have the fewest resources. And as school and businesses started to shut down last spring, the prospect of an in-person camp began to fade. So then we started to think about, how are we going to do the camp online? Are we going to do it virtually? But we decided not to do the string camp because we figured accessibility to internet and instruments would have been a major issue. So we started to think about helping those who have the most direct influence on the students, which is you all, their teachers. So first, I'd like to thank Nat King Cole Generation Hope for helping me put together this conference. I would also like to thank our clinicians today for volunteering their time to present for us. So without any further ado, I'd like to present our first clinician of the day. So we're very lucky, and I'm very grateful and thankful that we have William Harris Lee with us. And this is the same William Harris Lee of William Harris Lee Violins based here in Chicago. So a little bit about Bill and his shop. It's the biggest shop in the United States. They have a lot of professional level instruments in the hands of professional musicians from across the country. And they also have a robust education program that has rental programs, at least in here and Chicago. It's here in the Chicago area and the Atlanta area and several other places across the United States. So you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to Bill. And so without any further ado, Bill, it's all yours.
Well, it's nice to be here. I can't say enough about the foundation and all that they do. And over the last couple of years, it's been trying to move along and take underprivileged people, kids, and teach them. It's a wonderful group to be associated with. So today we're going to talk a little bit about cleaning of instruments, and it's important to understand that we cannot. What we can best do is sanitize the instruments. And that is mitigating the effects of germs and so forth. So it can't be overstated that the importance of having the children or the students cleaned is of primary importance. So in order to keep the instruments clean, we have to have the students clean too. What I've done is I've assembled a list of several things that can be in your kit for disinfecting instruments and cleaning them, and that will be given out later, I guess emailed to you. And what we've tried to do is assemble things that were not too expensive and environmentally practical and easy to make if necessary. There are certainly lots of options that are out there. Just be sure that as you search for those options, that you read and make sure that there's no solvents or anything that would affect the varnish of instruments. The things that we have here behind us are some of the solutions that we've come up with. One is 50% distilled vinegar and 50% water. The acidity is what helps to kill the virus. Hydrogen peroxide, 50% solution with water. That is usually a 3% hydrogen peroxide, and what we're looking for is ultimately is a 0.5% pure hydrogen peroxide mix. Another option is 90% water and 10% bleach. Those as a basic tool, as basic tools for cleansing instruments and mitigating those undesirable problems. Anyway, one of the things I want to talk about real briefly is varnish. We're in a field that we have wood, and wood is varnished. And basically, what varnish is a dissolving of natural resins and compounds in a solvent. And that can be, largely in educational instruments, it'll be an alcohol base. And so you liquefy that in the alcohol, and then it is put onto the instrument in layers to build up a protective cover for the wood and keep it from decaying and dirt. And there's also an aesthetic that it brings to the wood. And sealing it is a very important part. If you use a cleaner or use alcohol or something like that, and it happens to get on the instrument, it will soften the varnish or take the varnish off. You have to be extremely careful of the effects that would have on an instrument. So always check. You can take a chin rest off and check underneath the chin rest with a little damp cloth to see if that cleaner is taking off the varnish. The color of dirt is very different than the color of varnish. So if you're using a paper towel or a clean cotton cloth, you will see the difference, and it'll also get sticky as you're rubbing that area. Also, disinfecting wipes are good for certain parts of the instrument: chin rests, tailpieces, tuners, and buttons, and pins, the necks and pegs. And those are usually not problematic for the finishes on those in those particular places. We use alcohol wipes for sanitizing the fingerboards and strings. That is the medical type of alcohol wipe, and you want to be sure that there is just nothing dripping on that. It's just a simple damp cloth. You don't want to be able to squeeze that a cloth or a wipe and get anything out of it. You don't want to see it dripping. If that's the case, it's going to be too much. So there was some questions that came up recently about microfiber claws. Microfiber claws don't have any inherent disinfecting properties, but along with one of these solutions that we had, that would be okay. They clean the instrument off of dirt and rosin, but in and of themselves, they need something in addition to make to do the actual disinfecting. Also, there's been questions coming up about ultraviolet light and the effect of that on the coronavirus. We still need guidance on that. There are UV situations where they're using it for disinfecting masks and things like that, so they can be reused. It's a very high dose. I don't think that's what we're looking for, and I would tend to stay away from it because it can also dry out the instrument, cause it to crack, and there's other liabilities on that. When we get to case sanitizing, and that we use a Malort from a local distillery that has it's almost pure alcohol, and we use that for the outside of the cases, and then use a wipe for the inside of the cases. Bow sanitizing, which I'll go through, we use a alcohol swab wipe as well. Anyway, I'll show you real briefly how we do our cleaning of an instrument and sanitizing. Usually our method of addressing these instruments that come back in from rental is first to clean the instrument. We use a method cleaner, which is a biodegradable and a very safe thing for us to use. We're concerned about our employees. We're also concerned about what stuff goes into the air. So it's difficult to have too strong a antiseptic or disinfectant aerating an area, which, by the way, if you're in a school and you're cleaning, make sure you open the windows, make sure you open the doors, because these things do vaporize. In any case, we make sure the instrument is clean, and then we go back over and do the disinfecting. In this case, what I'm going to do, I'll show you on a cello first. We're going to use the hydrogen peroxide mix that we've made, which is, again, 50%, your standard hydrogen peroxide that you get from the drugstore, which is 3%, and it's diluted in half, so you're still at about 1.5% once it's in the we're done mixing it. They recommend 0.5 to 1% hydrogen peroxide for the killing of the virus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just put a little bit on. Oops, that went a little bit too far. Nice thing about using a paper towel is it's pretty absorbent. And in hydrogen peroxide, we like in particular because it is it's sort of a cousin of water, and it's not a strong chemical. So it's easy to use, and of course I should be putting on a glove in any case, which I'm going to do. We use a latex or a what is it, nitrile glove. So first thing is, well, let's see here. I'll make sure I try to get this in. Maybe you can tip that a little bit for me. Cleaning the pegs first and working our way down. These are the areas that get the most attention from people who are players. And you can see there is some stuff on there. Then the nut and the neck. These are very used and largely touched places. And again, you can see that there's some schmutz on it there. And this again is damp. It's not wet. There's nothing. You can't squeeze it and get anything out. Then the shoulders of the instrument, the ribs, the next, and the heel of the neck. Then front of the instrument, especially in the area that sorry, I'm losing you there, around where the instrument is played. Let's see, yeah, you can see there. And then you work your way down the instrument, then get to the tailpiece and the tuners. Oh, sorry, you can see that. I'm forgetting you can't see everything. The next thing is to use, we'll use a wipe on the fingerboard. It's an alcohol pad. These are 70%. These particular ones that I have are kind of small. There are some larger ones. We're having some trouble getting enough, getting everything we need when we need it. So here, you want to wrap the string with the wipe and work the length of the string. You can see again this is, yeah, it gets stuff on it. Same, we'll go across those strings. Okay. Then for the fingerboard, we'll actually do use the same hydrogen peroxide. Now I fold up a paper towel for doing this and put a little more of the hydrogen peroxide on there. Make sure it's soft or damp, and then slip it between the oh boy, okay, between the strings and the fingerboard like that, and then move up the fingerboard. There you go. Well, there you go. You see, there you get stuff off each time. Anyway, in a normal routine, I would say that you have to figure it. You know, once you learn the technique, you're going to have. It'll take about 10 minutes to do that work. Here, I'm going to give you this. Now I'll just show you quickly how to do a bow. Again, it might be best to at least for a while to use to take the frog loose from the stick, so you can do a good job on the stick. I'm going to use the same hydrogen peroxide on the stick itself. This is a wood bow, so on a wood bow, I don't necessarily want to use alcohol because it has these have varnish on them. For the balance of the bow, I'm going to use a swab, another wipe. Now, as long as you have the bow apart, it's worthwhile to just take some wax and wax the screw. You have it apart. It takes about 30 seconds or less to add that into the process. Let me get another swab here to do the the actual frog and handle of the frog. So here we go. Again, making sure you get the button well and the grip. There you go. So that, in brief, is the instrument and the bow routine for cleaning. For the interior of the case, we use a straight sanitizer, which is virtually, it's 100% or 90-some% alcohol. When we first get in the instruments, we will spray this with the sanitizer, and then we let it sit. You know, that's our standard procedure. Since it's pretty close to pure alcohol, it will evaporate quite quickly. The interior, what we use is just use a Clorox wipe, which is this is an antibacterial wipe. So you can see this is listed in the in our materials list that you'll get by email. So I guess that's the overall idea that we have in terms of our process and what we recommend for schools. There is a lot of discussion at this point whether there should be any, well, they're discouraging any sharing of instruments. That is an easy thing to say in places that have lots of instruments, but in a lot of the challenging areas of the country where we're trying to keep kids playing and have minimal resources, that's a lot more difficult. So we'll see what will happen going forward. So if you have questions, I would be happy to talk. Well, I'm going through some now. John has provided some.
So Bill, real quickly, some people are asking about the method cleaner behind you.
I cannot hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, someone is. Some people haven't. Can you hear me now? Okay, so some people have been asking about the method cleaner behind you. Do you use that for cleaning the instruments? Is that effective against the virus?
Well, no, that's effective for basically for cleaning. If you use when we go to sanitizing the instrument, we're using some of those the mixture of the hydrogen peroxide or bleach mixture. The method, you don't want to be trying to sanitize the dirt and the rosin because you want to get that off first and then go back and sanitize the instrument. So that's a two-step process. It'll probably be more difficult the first few times you have the instrument to sanitize it, but once you get that last year's film of dirt and rosin and stuff, it'll go a lot faster. Then you can do more just sanitizing.
Oh yeah, of course. Thank you for that. Other questions. People wanted to clarify alcohol versus hydrogen peroxide. So it's what, a 3% hydrogen peroxide solution distilled with 50% water?
Just it's that what the type of hydrogen peroxide that you can get at a drugstore is usually 3% hydrogen peroxide. And if you mix that 50% with water, you're down to 1.5%, give or take a little bit, which is above the guideline for killing and disinfecting viruses. So.
And then people wanted to clarify, that's good for the varnish, the wood part of the instrument.
You can use that on varnish. Don't let it stay on varnish. And also let me clarify, there are lots of different kinds of varnishes. I would say on educational level instruments in general, these are safe things. Again, if you have a question about it, go to an area that's a hidden area where you can test it to see. I suppose it might be a mild solvent, but it's about as basic as you can get and still get the.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So for like a typical rental level instrument, that would be okay. But let's say you have a $25,000 violin use.
Well, I would be cautious. And I think there's a certain point where you should talk to your local luthier or shop and see what they might recommend for cleaning. Beyond that, it should not be a problem in general, but I still recommend checking.
No, okay. So there was an interesting question earlier. I'm just going to read it verbatim.
Okay.
Our district used an electrostatic machine to spray on antibacterial mist. I was told that it would not damage the finish of our instruments. However, I am skeptical. I've had several bows on a windowsill when they sprayed, and those bows had damage to their finish when I returned to school 2 months later. Any words, any advice?
Wow. Yeah, I have. That's not an area that I do know anything about. I don't know what the material is that they're actually spraying. I would certainly be concerned about anything getting on the hair of a bow. That's if it's a pure, well, I don't see good coming out of that in a general sense. I understand why they might, for a large area, they may want to sanitize, but I would be concerned about it. But without knowing what it is, I don't know what to tell you. Be honest with you.
That is an interesting question. So earlier you mentioned, or you actually put on gloves to clean an instrument. Mm-hmm. Some school districts, they're not allowing their students to clean the instruments after use, but others may. Do you recommend that students use gloves to clean their own instrument?
I don't think it's if somebody is regularly doing it, I would advise using a glove, just because your skin gets dried out and you know, when you get old like me, your skin gets more brittle and nasty when it dries out. So I would recommend that. Certainly, if you're using a bleach mixture, you should use it. The hydrogen peroxide is, at least the vinegar, I don't think is a big problem. But I think anything that you're doing repetitively, using these different things, it's better to use a glove.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So here's another question. I'll just read verbatim. If the same student is using an instrument all the time, and they are washing their hands before and after playing, how often does the instrument, have to be cleaned?
And nobody else is using it. If it's actually put away and only that person is using it ever, I wouldn't think it would be a big problem. That's basically is a personal instrument, and it wouldn't come under the same criteria that we would have for a shared instrument. If other people touch it and use it, you have to just go back to square one on it.
So here's another question that goes back to the hydrogen peroxide solution. So you differentiated between using hydrogen peroxide on the body of the instrument and alcohol on the fingerboard and strings.
Right.
Is there any reason why you couldn't use hydrogen peroxide on the entire instrument?
Um, well, yeah, you could use that. I guess it's more a tradition to use that because you'll tend to get more rosin and stuff on the fingerboard and on the strings. And it never hurts to really dig into that. I don't know that hydrogen peroxide would be particularly good at removing the rosin from the strings, especially down near the bridge. So that's why we have done it that way anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting how tradition guides things. What do we do?
We're in a traditional business.
So there's been a few questions about cello racks. Let me find this. So let's say you have, in most schools you have instruments on cello racks. Should the instruments be spaced out a little bit more? Instead of on a cello on each rack, you have a cello on one, and then empty, and then cello, then empty. Is there any risk of spreading it that way that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of. I think you're basically, if there's any bacteria or virus on an instrument, it's not going to aerosol into the air at that point. So I don't think that's the issue.
So here's an interesting question. I am curious about this. We talk about disinfecting the surfaces that we touch most often on the instrument, but we don't typically touch the bow hair. So do we need to disinfect the bow hair? Do we need to worry about it, or what do you suggest for that?
Well, we just don't have a good idea of how to handle the hair at this point. We do disinfect the stick itself and the frog. People aren't supposed to be touching the hair. The problem is anything that's strong enough to clean the hair will also dissolve the rosin, which is a whole different can of worms. I do think that anytime it's possible, people should be assigned their own bows, at least, even if they can't have a separate instrument.
All right, so FYI for those listening, I have about 2 questions on my list. I might have missed some other questions, so please feel free to ask again. So I have it right there in the chat box. So here's the next question. I would be interested in knowing how to expedite the cleaning for a shared instrument setting. Could you take one alcohol wipe and then clean the strings for a few cellos in a row? Or do you need to have a new wipe for each instrument? Anything to make it a little bit more quicker?
Yeah, I would say you would want to have a wipe for each instrument if they're shared. I don't know that you would have to use that alcohol wipe. You could use one of the disinfecting Clorox wipes and maybe fold it in a way that you're not using the same surface each time, and maybe keep an alcohol wipe just for around the bridge area.
So here's my question for you. We've gone through so many changes the past 3-4 months. It's just been absolutely crazy, absolutely insane. But you're talking about keeping your employees safe, keeping your customers safe. What is one of the bigger changes that you've made when using or repairing or touching other people's instruments? What is one of the big things that you would suggest teachers to really be careful about or really focus on?
So what we do is when somebody brings in an instrument, it's put aside. We spray the case before, and we let it sit for 3 days or 2 days. We won't work on an instrument that we can't clean and disinfect. at the same time. It's just for safety reasons. People, you'd be surprised the kind of instruments that we see come into our shop and the amount of grime and stuff that's on them. So we want to make sure that the folks that are working on the instruments are have disinfected the instrument before they start, and we disinfect it after they're done, and return it to the owner then.
So you said that you wouldn't touch an instrument that you feel like you couldn't clean and disinfect. What does that
Well,
even
no, I wouldn't. We wouldn't take in an instrument for repair. That part of that process didn't include the cleaning and sanitizing of the instrument.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people bring in instruments and they don't want to get it clean. They just want this work or that work done. That's not a viable thing for us any longer.
Okay, no, I understand now. I probably just misinterpreted. Someone asked why alcohol wipes versus rubbing alcohol on paper towel? What's the difference between that?
Well, my reasoning on that is just that it's a lot less alcohol, number one, and you can use a cloth with alcohol, but the tendency is to put too much on. And I would strongly recommend that if you're going to do something like that, that you have you can make a simple apron for the instrument to put over the instrument, so that if any alcohol drips, it doesn't ruin the varnish. It's too easy to mess up your varnish, and that can get very expensive very fast to fix, although maybe not on educational instruments. But I think, again, the key here is it doesn't need to be wet. It needs to be damp. You don't want to be able to squeeze it and see something drip out of it. That's way too much.
I learned that the hard way when I was about 9 years old and had my first full-size instrument. I just saw my teacher put rubbing alcohol on the fingerboard to wipe it off, so I said, I want to do the same thing. And then it dripped, and now there was a dot on that instrument where the varnish ate away. So
yeah,
I can speak to that one personally. So here's...
there's a famous story that I have about a famous cellist who used to recommend that they use 4-0000 steel wool and alcohol to clean the strings and fingerboard, and that ended up being a disaster. So it's something you need to be awfully cautious of.
So there's one just to clarify, the alcohol mix that you used to spray the cases. What was the percentage?
That's actually, I think, 98%. It's virtually pure alcohol. It's a distillery here in Chicago that makes it. There's another product called Everclear, which is the same thing. You can buy that at a liquor store, and it's used for drink. It's a one you can use for drinking as well. Not at school, of course. That also, if you use it in a fine mist on the case, as I had shown, it dries very quickly.
Yeah, that would be an interesting conversation. Submit a purchase order for Everclear to your administration.
Well, now I think this distillery adds something to the alcohol, so they have to say it's not for drinking on there. And I'm sure there's also tax laws and things like that. But it still is a relatively inexpensive part of this protocol.
No, totally, of course. So here's another question. How long should the instrument sit after cleaning before being played by another student? I imagine some of these teachers have back-to-back classes. Is there a certain amount of time between usage?
No, not if you're using, as long as it's dry, you should be fine.
So here's another interesting question. So If the school is using a fogging for sanitizing in large rooms, they have lockers. We have lockers with open doors for our cello and basses, so you can't like close them, and the mist will go through. Should they be concerned that fogging will hurt the instruments?
You know what? I don't know what they're fogging with. Are the instruments in cases or covers, or are they just out? That's a good question. I can't imagine that they would be using anything that's volatile. You know, if they're just fogging an entire room when nobody's sitting in it. But without knowing the actual material that they're using, I'll have to pass on that question.
But would you at least maybe recommend keeping the instruments in the cases? I know when I was teaching K-12, we put the cellos on the racks outside of their particular cases. Would it be better to just put them in the case after each use, or should they be cleaned before putting back in the cases?
Are these are shared instruments or personal instruments?
Let's say both.
Oh, okay. Well, if they're personal instruments, I'd say keep them in the case, and that's always a better place for them to be. If they're shared, I can see both sides of that, and again, you'd have to quiz the who's ever doing the fogging to find out what's in that, and if there is any kind of well, if it's just a disinfectant or something like that, it shouldn't be a big problem, but I would just double check on that. I'm talking out my ear on that one.
Totally
Without knowing.
understandable. I mean, the fogging concept, I mean, this is my ignorance speaking. The fogging concept is new to me just now. The
Yeah.
person just mentioned that it's a Clorox 360 machine. I'm not really familiar with what they use. But I
Oh,
wanted to point that out.
well, if it's a bleach-based thing, and if it doesn't make things wet, then I would imagine that it should be acceptable anyway. But I don't know that really solves the problem of cleaning, especially the neck and the pegs and stuff like that. It may be fine for the body. That usually doesn't get a lot on it, but the hands-on area of an instrument, it would be, I think that might not be sufficient.
So, another question is, just for clarity, you briefly mentioned Clorox wipes, but they wanted to ask, can it be used on the varnish, or is it just on non-varnish items?
That I would say on non-varnished items.
Okay, and another question is, other than having multiple sets of instruments, are there any suggestions for multiple classes with shared cellos and basses, aside from cleaning, or?
Well, I think that I mean, if you have the kids wash their hands when they come in, they put the instrument away. Maybe there's even a light disinfecting that can happen quickly that would dry. I don't have a good I don't really have any place to go until we get a little more input from people as time goes on. So much of this is going to be data that we gather over time.
Oh yeah, yesterday one of the clinicians mentioned that a mixture of water and baby soap could be used. I don't know if you have any suggestions on that or have heard of that.
I would not use disinfecting soap on children for sure.
Well, I mean, no. Baby soap on the instrument.
Oh, I see. You know what? If there's if it's a disinfecting soap, that's fine. I mean, you can create like, it's like washing your hands. If you're using a soap where you're getting it foamy and you're rubbing on it, I'm concerned about what that does to glue joints and things like that on an instrument. So yeah, you could foam an instrument and do all that kind of stuff, but I'm just not sure what the effect of the moisture in especially the glue joints would be.
Yeah,
It
totally.
would work well for the virus, but
Yeah. So at the risk of you having many requests for cleaning, you mentioned that you require a cleaning service before you repair the instrument. How much do you normally charge approximately for that cleaning service for an instrument repair?
well, it's just based on the amount of time it takes. So somebody who's taking care of their instruments, it can be $15 or $20, and when there are people that come in and it takes us 2 hours to do it, and I feel like being as putative as I can at a time like that, like, take care of your instrument and don't make us do this. But a light cleaning and disinfecting is not expensive.
All right. I think I'm running out of the questions. Just for those audience that are sitting and listening today, if I missed something, we have a few more moments.
Yeah, there was one question about the kind of wax that we use.
Oh yeah, that's.
It's not beeswax, but it's a candle, basically a candle wax. Oh, paraffin, yeah, paraffin wax is what it is, and it's cheap. It's just if you pull the instrument or the bow apart, it's a great lubricant, and it'll make the screw and eyelet last longer. There's also a product that Rod Moore, who's a well-known and very fine bow maker, makes for the screw and eyelets, and you can use the wax or this product also on the E-string tuners or tuners to lubricate them.
That's paraffin wax?
Paraffin wax, yeah.
Okay, very good. Any thoughts on the effects of so much water or water-based cleaners around the instruments used several times a day or over an extended amount of time?
Well, the only thing is that I think you want to wipe on the disinfectant mix and wipe it dry pretty quickly after that. You don't want to leave it sitting there. Again, it's just glue. The glue that we use on instruments is hide glue, which is dissolved in water, and any kind of moisture can loosen that bond, and we don't want to have that happen. So don't leave it on for a long time.
All right, so like wipe it on and maybe have another cloth to dry it off to its drying
exactly.
process. All right. Someone asked, moving a little bit away from COVID a little bit, can you use valve oil on adjusting screws? I know that, admittedly, I did it on fine tuners. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, the problem with an oil base on a screw is that it attracts the rosin and stuff. So the paraffin wax literally will cost $1 for a block that big, or a couple of dollars for a block that big, and it will last a lifetime. And it's very easy to put on. So I would tend to go with that. Getting oil and rosin and stuff mixed up.
Yeah. Do you mind showing real quickly how you would apply paraffin wax on a screw?
Yeah. Well, actually, I can show you. I don't have the paraffin here, but I do have the let's see, where am I at here? Oh, this product from Rod Moore, which is, I'm sure, wax based, and basically just rubbing the screw through it.
Oh, very simple.
Let's see. You can see it on the screw there. Oops. Yeah, not a great visual, but anyway, there's wax that stayed as you rub the screw through the wax. It sticks on the thread, and that's it. And the same principle would be true for taking a screw out of a tailpiece, and it's very effective. It's a easy thing to do.
All right. I think one of our last questions will be, what are your suggestions with lubricating base machine heads?
Um, well, I suppose you could use something like that. Base machines are um, uh, a slightly different, a bigger thread stuff, but I think that wax would be a viable product for that. We don't. I'd have to check. You know what? I can check exactly on that and add that to our the notes that I will send in, so that we'll have that added.
All right. No, no, very good. That's a very neat question.
Yeah.
Have you had any experience with any of the disinfecting solutions that you've told us today with any interactions with people with allergies or how you would avoid that or
We haven't had anybody here have any kind of problems with it. Um, uh, there have been some anecdotal comments that I've seen from, not from people in the business, but just in my research. But I don't really know offhand. I will try to keep updating this so that if there are questions that come up or answers that I see on these things, we can create a little blog on it.
no, totally, of course. I mean, these are all, it's we try very hard to think about what are the questions that are going to be asked, but there's always someone asking something else that we haven't thought about. I mean, this is how the hive mind works. But Bill, I really want to thank you for taking the time to sit with us today and answer these questions and talk about everything that you do at the shop to keep your customers and keep your employees and their families safe. I mean, it's a very tough time, and it's just interesting how much we have to adapt and change what we have normally done in the past to what we have to do now. Do you have any other final parting words?
Wear masks, wash your hands, clean your instruments, be healthy.
All right, thank you very much, Bill. Bill said that he'll stick around just a little bit if you want to private message William Lee for any questions. He'll be happy to sit down and do that while we go on to our next presentation.